Peter Zezel was more than just a name on the back of a jersey. He embodied an unwavering passion for sports, a friendly charisma that drew fans in at every turn, and a generous spirit that quietly transformed the lives of countless people off the ice. His rise to prominence in the NHL during the 1980s began with his dazzling play for the Philadelphia Flyers, continued through memorable runs with teams like the St. Louis Blues and Toronto Maple Leafs, and culminated in a heartbreaking personal decision that underscored his commitment to family and humanity above all else. Although Peter Zezel's journey ended far too early, his legacy still shines as an example of genuine compassion and character. A reminder that not all heroes are found solely in the final box score. Today, let us delve deeper into the life and times of Peter Zezel in a fresh, invigorating retelling that captures not only the facts and figures but the heartbeat of a man who played to win, both on the ice and in life. Born and raised in Scarborough, Ontario, Zezel was, at a young age, recognized not just for his hockey talent but also for his remarkable soccer skills. Many people who followed his life story claim he could have excelled equally in professional soccer had the sport enjoyed greater mainstream support in North America during the early 1980s. Indeed, he dabbled in a professional soccer environment, playing briefly for the Toronto Blizzard in the North American Soccer League and later for the North York Rockets. It was an unconventional path for a rising hockey prospect, but he treated soccer as more than just a pastime. It was a part of his athletic DNA. Soccer gave him well-rounded conditioning, lightning foot speed, and an unyielding endurance. However, after analyzing his future opportunities, he saw that hockey offered a wider stage in North America, and so, with eagerness and optimism, he set out to pursue a career on the ice. That decision would take him from local rinks in Ontario to some of hockey's biggest arenas. Despite his swift rise in hockey, a piece of his heart always remained with the beautiful game of soccer, and his experiences there added a unique dimension to his persona as a two-sport athlete. In 1983, the Philadelphia Flyers selected Zezel in the second round of the NHL entry draft. He was coming off a sensational junior season with the OHL's Toronto Marlboros in which he racked up 133 points. For those unfamiliar with the Ontario Hockey League, it has long served as one of Canada's prime development grounds for future NHL stars. Leading the Marlboros, an organization with a storied history, to success was no small task, but Zezel's unstoppable scoring, deft passing, and relentless hustle ensured he became a shining standout. The Flyers, always on the lookout for physicality and competitive drive in their prospects, saw enormous potential in Zezel. His robust lower body strength and balanced skating style suggested he might blossom into a reliable center at the pro level, capable of anchoring a line and winning critical faceoffs in a league that values puck possession. He made his NHL debut in the mid-1980s, arriving at a time when the Flyers were forging an identity around toughness, determination, and a desire to return to the Stanley Cup Finals after the glory days of the mid to late 1970s. From his earliest outings in Philadelphia, it was impossible not to notice Zezel's infectious smile and affable nature. Whether he was giving interviews after a scrimmage or chatting with reporters by his locker, people gravitated toward him. He had those movie star good looks, some said, and a warmth that could melt even the iciest of rivalries. Off the ice, he was witty, playful, always ready to liven up a dull moment. The camaraderie he built in the locker room soon extended to the fans in the stands who were thrilled to see a young talent rise so quickly. Philadelphia, a sports town known for passionate and sometimes demanding fans, responded positively to Zezel's hustle on the ice. He hustled for every puck, battled on every shift, and displayed remarkable maturity for such a young player. Soon, he was shoulder to shoulder with some of the biggest names in the locker room, and playing an integral part in a surprising run to the Stanley Cup Finals. Under the notoriously demanding coaching style of Mike Keenan, the 1984-85 Flyers found themselves going all the way to challenge the dynastic Edmonton Oilers in the Cup Finals. Though the Flyers fell short, that season solidified the team's status as an up-and-coming juggernaut and cemented Zezel's reputation as a versatile, hard-working forward. He could score, but he was also committed in the defensive zone, a two-way force with a knack for winning face-offs that helped his team control the pace of the game. Despite his success, Keenan initially subjected Zezel to a baptism by fire. Stories circulated about the coach's tactics, including forcing the young center to dress in a Zamboni room during the playoffs. a harsh measure designed to test his psychological toughness. At the time, Keenan was known as Iron Mike, a coach who was willing to push players to their breaking point if he believed it would sharpen their focus and mental resilience. While many, including Zezel, found these methods harsh, they also contributed to the players' grit. Curiously enough, Keenan later acknowledged that he wished he had handled Zezel's early years differently, regretting subjecting such a young, impressionable player to intense psychological pressure. Despite these behind-the-scenes battles, Zezel's star continued to climb. Riding the wave of attention, he even made a cameo in the 1986 hockey-themed film, Youngblood, starring Rob Lowe. Although it was a minor role, Zezel's brief appearance further endeared him to fans who enjoyed seeing a local NHL favorite pop up on the big screen. And that was fitting, really, because Youngblood was all about a promising kid who had to balance talent, grit, and personal challenges, much like the path Zezel himself was walking. On the ice, that 1985-86 season saw him rattle off 33 goals and 72 points, a career high mark that proved his offensive skills were more than just a temporary spark. He contributed during the playoffs as well, helping push the dynastic Oilers to 7 games in one of the most thrilling Stanley Cup finals of the 1980s. That battle against Wayne Gretzky's powerhouse squad is still frequently cited as one of the decade's most memorable series. A defining trait emerged in Zezel's game, an almost unshakable stability on his skates, powered by exceptionally strong legs and core balance. Opponents discovered that it was no easy task to knock him off the puck. Legendary agitators like Dale Hunter found themselves bouncing off Zezel's lower body strength. Fans still talk about that memorable collision when Hunter slammed into Zezel, only to be knocked flat while Zezel stayed upright. Such moments of unstoppable fortitude became a big part of his highlight reel and told the league that Peter Zezel's game was not just flash and flare but had an unyielding physical dimension. Yet as dazzling as Zezel could be on the ice, his off-ice persona was even more noteworthy. Journalists, teammates, and fans all recount his warm heart and genuine compassion. He spent countless hours visiting children in hospitals, forging friendships that extended beyond the occasional photo op. Instead of simply posing for a picture and rushing out, Zezel would linger to talk with patients and their families, offering real support and empathy. That generosity towards sick children and families would become central to his life later on when tragedy struck his own family. By all accounts, Peter Zezel felt a calling to help others, especially children who were fighting daunting health struggles. In a world where pro athletes are sometimes criticized for distant or self-serving attitudes, Zezel's quiet generosity offered a refreshing counterpoint. Still, professional hockey is a business, and trades and transactions often disrupt the comfort and camaraderie players attempt to cultivate. After a slow start to the 1988-89 season, Philadelphia sent Zezel packing to the St. Louis Blues in exchange for Mike Bullard. The Blues, who boasted a serious offensive weapon in Brett Hull, quickly recognized Zezel's potential as a reliable center who could feed Hull the puck. This collaboration yielded tremendous results. Hull soared to new scoring heights, smashing into the league's elite ranks, while Zezel, too, enjoyed a statistical revival. He tallied 49 assists in that partial season alone and helped Hull register phenomenal numbers. In the following year, Zezel matched his career best with 72 points, a testament to how well he flourished when given the responsibility of setting up the team's top goal scorer. Brett Hull himself sang Peter Zezel's praises, emphasizing Zezel's importance in allowing him the space and time to unleash that lethal shot. But the front office moves in the NHL seldom revolve around loyalty, and even though Hull wanted Zezel to stay, Blues GM Ron Caron ultimately traded Zezel to the Washington Capitals in July 1990. Zezel's stint with Washington proved relatively short, disrupted by injuries that hampered his game. He played enough to show glimpses of his trademark face-off mastery and dependable defense, but a major trade soon bundled him off to the Toronto Maple Leafs alongside Bob Rouse. Toronto parted with Al Iafrate, an offensively gifted defenseman, to acquire Zezel, expecting him to be a valuable piece of a puzzle that was then under transformation. For Zezel, returning to Toronto was not just another transaction. It was a homecoming, a chance to play in front of friends, family, and the fans he had grown up around. Hockey in Toronto is practically a religion, and any local boy returning to suit up for the Maple Leafs faces intense scrutiny. But Zezel embraced the challenge. He accepted a more specialized role as a defensive center, a face-off expert, and a penalty-killing wizard. He became a vital piece in those areas the Leafs had often struggled with, helping them vault into deeper playoff territory. Indeed, the Maple Leafs in the early to mid-1990s experienced some of their best postseason runs in the modern era. During Zezel's time there, the Leafs battled valiantly through multiple playoff series, including a memorable run in 1993 when they came within one game of reaching the Stanley Cup Finals. Although they ultimately fell short against Wayne Gretzky and the Los Angeles Kings in an epic conference final, those were the years that reinvigorated Toronto's fervent fanbase. Zezel, though not the primary star in terms of goal scoring or point production, captured hearts with his unrelenting defensive diligence, face-off wizardry, and unwavering willingness to do the little things that help teams win. Fans admired him for it, chanting his name and writing it on signs at Maple Leaf Gardens. Teammates spoke glowingly of Zezel's calm leadership and positivity in the locker room. He commanded respect, not so much through booming speeches, but through consistent work ethic and a supportive presence that reminded everyone why they played the game in the first place. However, as is so often the case in professional sports, rosters shifted and careers moved on. Throughout the mid-1990s, Zezel found himself traded or signed with several teams, including the Dallas Stars and a brief return to St. Louis. Later, he went to the New Jersey Devils. None of these stops lasted very long, and they often saw Zezel in a utility role, the face-off and penalty kill specialist who could be called upon in crucial moments. While he sometimes must have yearned for the stability of a long-term home, he maintained a professional demeanor and did his best to adapt to each new system, each new city. Then came the late 90s chapter that proved to be one of the most poignant in his entire career, embodying both heartbreak and profound humanity. In February 1998, the Vancouver Canucks, then under Mike Keenan, ironically enough, acquired Zezel. The day that trade happened, Zezel's family received devastating news. His niece Jillian, the 2.5-year-old daughter of Peter's sister, had been diagnosed with cancer. By now, friends and observers already knew Zezel to be deeply compassionate toward children battling illnesses, but when it hit home so directly, his focus became laser-sharp on family matters. Before even suiting up for his first Canucks game, he scrawled Jillian's name on his stick. In a near-miraculous twist, he scored on his very first shift with Vancouver. It was a moment so uplifting that it seemed to transcend the usual sports narratives, offering a glimmer of hope and faith that perhaps Jillian and her family could draw strength from. Yet this chain of events is best understood in the fuller context of the months leading up to that trade. Before landing in Vancouver, Zezel had been with the New Jersey Devils, whose GM Lou Lamoriello had assigned him to the AHL's Albany River Rats. A sign that Zezel's NHL prospects, in the Devils' eyes, were dimming. Yet Zezel did not sulk or become resentful. He rededicated himself to the game. His stats in Albany sparkled: 50 points in 35 games, good enough to earn a nod to the All-Star game. By sheer coincidence, that All-Star game took place on the very same day he was officially traded to Vancouver, also the same day he learned of Jillian's diagnosis. He had every reason to skip the game, especially with an NHL trade completed and a heartbreaking family crisis unfolding. But he showed up in time to honor the Albany organization that had treated him well, and not only did he play, he scored the game-winning goal and was named the MVP of the contest. It was a testament not just to his skill but to his loyalty and sense of respect. He could have walked away without any blowback, yet he put in the effort for that one last game, a gesture that endeared him to teammates, minor league fans, and hockey enthusiasts everywhere. Upon arriving in Vancouver, Zezel found new life as a checking line center under Mike Keenan once more. The coach who had once pushed him so hard back in Philadelphia now sought his reliability and leadership on a struggling Canucks team. And for a while, it looked like Zezel had found a suitable home. He contributed effectively, won face-offs, and remained a positive presence in the dressing room. But the winds of change in management soon swirled again. When Brian Burke took the reins as Canucks GM, he replaced Keenan and charted a new direction for the team. Zezel's role shrank, but he was, as always, ready to fill whatever niche the team required. His main concern, however, lay off the ice. Jillian's illness grew more severe, and every moment he could spare, he tried to spend with his beloved niece. In January 1999, with Zezel nursing an injury, the family decided to take Jillian to Disney World for what they hoped would be a precious and uplifting vacation despite the grim prognosis. Peter joined them, seeking time away from the daily grind of the NHL to be with his niece in what everyone feared might be her final days. Then, in March 1999, he formally requested that Burke either allow him to finish the season in Vancouver or trade him to a team closer to Jillian on the East Coast. Zezel's request was simple. He wanted to remain near his ailing niece for whatever time she had left. Hockey, a sport that had once encompassed his every ambition, was now secondary in his heart. The response he received from management was shocking, and it changed the trajectory of his life forever. Instead of accommodating Zezel's desire to be near Toronto or somewhere in the eastern region of North America, Burke sent him to the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, a move that geographically placed Zezel about as far away from Jillian as one could get while still playing in the NHL. The cruelty of that trade resonated with fans and media alike. Distraught but resolute, Zezel refused to report. He had already made up his mind that family came first. Burke reacted by initially threatening to suspend him, a decision that drew harsh public scrutiny. Critics called it insensitive, even heartless, to punish a player who simply wanted to care for a sick child in her final days. The outcry was so strong that the transaction was eventually voided, leaving Zezel free to go home. Chastened, the Canucks scrambled to defuse the situation, buying out Zezel's contract and donating over $100,000 to the Canucks Foundation in support of terminally ill children. It was, in many ways, a stark indictment of how business decisions in professional sports can clash with basic human compassion. Reflecting on the situation, Zezel's words were simple but powerful. He would have regretted not being there for Jillian for the rest of his life if he had chosen hockey over family in that crucial moment. Soon after he arrived back in Ontario, Jillian passed away. She was just a little girl who had never chosen any of these circumstances, but the light and love she inspired in Peter Zezel, and by extension the entire hockey community, left a lasting impact. That heartbreak marked the end of Zezel's NHL career. He walked away from the spotlight without looking back, dedicating himself instead to the life he found more meaningful, supporting those closest to him. Post-retirement, Zezel remained a familiar face to many young athletes in the Toronto area. He coached youth hockey and soccer camps, teaching the fundamentals of the sports he adored, but also emphasizing life skills like teamwork, respect, and resilience. Those who attended his camps recall not just a coach who taught them how to improve their slap shot or corner kick, but a mentor who would take time to chat with every player and ensure they felt comfortable and motivated. This new phase of his life brought him tremendous joy, as he watched kids develop athletically and personally. He never stopped being that warm-hearted man who had once taken time for children in hospital wards. Now he was offering his expertise and encouragement to children on rinks and soccer fields, passing on a legacy of character that seemed to define him more than any trophy or statistic ever could. In 2001, just a couple of years after Jillian's passing, tragedy struck again, this time for Peter himself. He was diagnosed with a rare and incurable blood disease that caused his red blood cells to disintegrate faster than his body could replace them. This illness drained his energy, disrupted his life, and confronted him with the possibility that his own time might be short. Ever the fighter, he tried to keep up with his responsibilities, running youth sports programs while undergoing various medical treatments. He had chemotherapy, lost his spleen to surgery, and endured a litany of side effects from heavy medication. Fans who encountered him noticed the physical changes, the bloating, the weight gain, but many had no idea he was facing something so severe. Some who remembered the agile, strong center found it almost inconceivable that the same man was now walking this arduous path. Yet he carried on, determined not to let the disease deprive him of the joy he found in teaching and mentoring kids. By May 2009, his condition had deteriorated drastically. Organs began to fail, and doctors placed him in a coma. His family, understanding that he was slipping beyond medical help, agreed to take him off life support. On May 26, 2009, Peter Zezel passed away at just 44 years old, a life cut short, but one that had burned bright with kindness, integrity, and a fierce devotion to others. Tributes poured in from fans, former teammates, coaches, friends, and media personalities, all testifying to the special blend of skill and humility that had defined Peter Zezel's existence. His funeral took place in Scarborough, and he was laid to rest at Pine Hills Cemetery, an unassuming end to a life that had touched so many. In 2014, the city of Scarborough found a way to honor their hometown hero by naming a street after him, ensuring that his memory would be woven into the very landscape he once walked. Former teammates like Wendell Clark and Mark Osborne attended the ceremony, praising Zezel as a man who transcended the mold of the typical professional athlete. They reminded everyone that while he had been an integral part of some storied NHL teams, his real gift was the love and humanity he freely gave to everyone he met, whether they were best friends or complete strangers. His mother, too, carried pride and grief in equal measure, offering tearful thanks to those who remembered her son not just as a hockey player but as a man who gave without expectation of reward. Peter Zezel's story feels at times like a Hollywood script. The young star with matinee idol looks, forced to fight against adversity, who soared in the biggest moments, but ultimately walked away from the game he loved to save someone he loved more. For many fans, hockey is a game of numbers: goals, assists, penalty minutes. But Zezel's example serves as a reminder that there is often a more significant narrative behind the statistics. While he notched impressive totals in Philadelphia and St. Louis and was a key role player on Toronto's deep playoff runs, it was his decision to prioritize family over a professional paycheck in the face of managerial callousness that truly defined his moral fiber. The heartbreak that followed, both with Jillian's passing and his own untimely death, casts a bittersweet shadow over an otherwise vibrant story. Yet it is precisely this fusion of triumph, tragedy, and unbreakable spirit that elevates Peter Zezel's life from mere highlights to something transcendent. Looking back over his career, one can't help but appreciate how seamlessly Zezel melded grit and grace. As a player, his willingness to do the dirty work, forecheck, dig pucks out of corners, block shots, and battle in the face-off circle, coexisted with the showmanship to set up dazzling goals or occasionally score one himself. He was equally comfortable in a starring role, dishing pucks to scoring machines like Brett Hull, or in a more subdued defensive capacity, stifling opponents' top lines. Each new city that he called home admired him for these qualities, but also for his open, jovial nature that never seemed to fade no matter how many times he was traded or how many coaching changes he endured. The era in which Zezel played, particularly the 1980s through mid-1990s, was full of legendary talent: Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier, Mario Lemieux, Steve Yzerman, and a host of other big names who frequently eclipsed players like Zezel in the headlines. Yet ask anyone who shared the ice with him or lined up against him, and they will acknowledge he was a formidable competitor and a treasured teammate. He represented the quiet heartbeat of many lines, the center who would retrieve the puck, keep it away from bigger defenders, and make the precise pass that set up a goal. And as the league watched, they also saw a man unafraid to approach the biggest, toughest guys in the game, leveraging that famous lower body strength to stand his ground when confronted by bruisers like Dale Hunter. But perhaps the greatest testament to Peter Zezel isn't found in an arena or a highlight reel. It's the story of the countless children he visited, the words of comfort he offered, and the unwavering sense of responsibility he carried in that final, pivotal moment. When it came time to choose, he walked away from everything he had worked his entire life to achieve: NHL paychecks, national recognition, on-ice glory, to ensure he was at his niece's side in her final weeks. That degree of selflessness is all too rare, both in professional sports and in everyday life. It underscores the enduring truth that character is often best revealed under the most painful or stressful circumstances. In the wake of Zezel's passing, many fans who only knew him through the screen or from afar found themselves deeply moved by his story. They recalled seeing him as a fresh-faced rookie on a promising Flyers squad, or catching glimpses of his cameo in Youngblood, or marveling at his synergy with Brett Hull in St. Louis, or celebrating the Maple Leafs' near run to the Cup in 1993. Then, when the trade to Anaheim turned tragic, they saw a man whose personal conviction took precedence over professional ambition. The lasting impression is that of a hero in humility. A person who didn't just talk about doing the right thing but did it, even when it cost him. In so many ways, that is the Peter Zezel who remains in the hearts of those who loved him or simply admired him from the stands. Visiting Pine Hills Cemetery in Scarborough, one finds a modest resting place for a man whose story resonates with the complexities of hope, heartache, and the enduring power of kindness. When asked for reflections, Zezel's mother once said that Peter's greatest achievement was not the trophies or the goals, but the relationships he formed with those whose paths he crossed. Friends, relatives, and former teammates echo that sentiment. "He was the hometown boy who never put himself above anyone else," said Wendell Clark. "He loved being in Toronto, being part of the community, and he remained that same guy no matter what successes or setbacks he faced." Mark Osborne recalled Zezel's sense of humor. The way he could light up an otherwise tense atmosphere in the locker room with a quip or a lighthearted joke, diffusing pressure so teammates could focus on what needed to be done. It's fitting that, years later, the community that shaped him would find a permanent tribute by dedicating a street in his honor. While star players often see their numbers retired or their names raised to the rafters, a street sign is a humbler but perhaps more intimate memorial. It serves as a daily reminder to everyone who passes by that there was once a boy from Scarborough who pursued his passions, who shone brightly in the world of hockey, and who gave it all up to be there for a loved one in need. For younger generations who might not recognize the name on that sign, discovering Peter Zezel's story can be a revelation, proof that sports, at their best, reflect human values of courage, compassion, and collective support. For those who watched him play, it's simply a tender echo of a man whose life ended too soon. Like the greatest tales in sports, his life featured both triumph and tragedy. We remember the wide grin under that orange Flyers helmet, the unstoppable face-off stance in St. Louis, the jubilant celebrations in Maple Leaf Gardens, and then, in his final chapter, the heartbreak of a niece's illness and his own unexpected medical battle. Ultimately, these moments form a tapestry that is as complicated and poignant as life itself. Even in his last days, Zezel was coaching and guiding youngsters, imparting a message that the love of the game is important, but the love of people is more important. He taught them technique, but also taught them that the measure of success stretches beyond trophies and accolades. Those who love hockey's history can reflect on the many what-ifs. What if the Flyers had won those cup finals? What if the Blues had never traded him? What if injuries had been kinder? Such questions, however, pale in comparison to the lasting impact of his real choice, turning his back on the game when a family emergency demanded his immediate presence. For that decision alone, many consider him a champion in the truest sense of the word. Today, when fans or family members speak about Peter Zezel, they often do so in soft, reverent tones. They recount stories of a joyful kid who could handle a soccer ball as adeptly as a hockey puck, a hard-working teenager who soared through the OL, a bright-eyed pro who stood up to the fiercest skaters in the NHL, and ultimately, a generous soul who put everything on hold for the sake of a little girl named Jillian. His memory lingers, not just in highlight reels, but in street signs, in the hearts of children he coached, and in the myriad stories fans share about the kind gesture he showed them on some random day at the arena. These recollections shape the mosaic of a person who refused to let life's pressures chip away his good nature. Perhaps, in the end, we can sum up Peter Zezel's life with a simple image: the broad-shouldered center, leaning forward at the face-off dot, calmly readying for the puck drop, Jillian's name taped on his stick. In that moment, hockey and family, competition and compassion, merged into a single snapshot of a man who always knew where his priorities lay. Nothing could topple him, neither the fiercest body check nor the harshest managerial move, when it came to staying true to the people he loved. And so, while the final horn of his life has long since sounded, the echoes of Peter Zezel's story remain loud and clear. Greatness is defined not just by skill, but by heart. He exemplified both, and the memory of that simple truth will forever keep his spirit alive. Thanks for watching the whole video. If you like it, please give us a like, comment and subscribe to the channel to receive notifications of new videos.